I would never have thought that I would be running for politics when I was in high school, when I was 18. I thought I just liked politics. I liked learning about it. I liked helping other people that were running, but I never thought that I myself would be running. So it took that, and I wouldn't have been ready, even by like 25, I wouldn't have been ready to run. It took that time to really grow in my own identity and what I wanted to do. By the time I was 27 or 26 when I ran, to actually run for city council. So I would just say have compassion, be patient, and figure out your identity and what you really want at the end of the day.
What advice do you have to kind of help us talk to younger kids that are our age also, to let them know the importance of voting and, you know, signing up and raising awareness?
That's a great question, and I appreciate what you do to help get more young people engaged and politically minded. So I really appreciate that work. I think one of the things I try to do when I talk to young people about voting is make it more relevant to their own life. So how can I think young people like to know, how will my life be different by voting for this particular person versus this particular person, or for this initiative or referendum or policy versus this one. And so painting that picture for them around everyday life and how that is going to change once that policy or that person is now in this position, and elevating the conversation above the day-to-day news cycle that we get. Because when you look at the news right now, it's so divided. And in actuality, voting is so much more. Voting has a history of either providing communities power to leverage to then say, this is the amount of people that are voting in this particular demographic, and so we're going to listen to this demographic. That's why for so many years the government tried to suppress voters of color, especially Black and brown people, from being able to vote, so they can then say we can do whatever we want to do with their housing, with their healthcare, with their local economic development. And that's why we end up with the people and the policies that we have. So it's important to paint the picture, and I say like this. So if you have $300 in your pocket right now, and I asked for $100 of it, and I just said, give me that $100, what would you say? You'd be like, what? Why are you taking my money? What's it for? And yet we do it every day with our taxes as a system. We have hundreds of millions of dollars going into the prison system, for example, that then incarcerates Black and brown people. What can we do to then say, let's have a voice on that, on our tax dollar? And by doing that, you need to have the people in the right place that are gonna advocate for your values in your community when it comes to voting, and same with policies. So I think it's important at every level, locally, statewide, and federally, to paint a picture of what it's gonna change or what's gonna happen when you vote for this particular person or this particular plan that they have. So that's what I would say, is really paint that picture, make it in simple terms for young people.
A challenge we face is becoming overwhelmed when looking at the bigger picture. How do we get back on track and stay focused?
Great question, and I'm so glad you asked it, because I've been reflecting on that myself. I feel like I'm in like the fifth stage of the stages of grief, and what happened with what we're facing between police brutality, between COVID-19, between economic injustice and inequity. So I'm kind of in that stage now. I went through, like, I was super mad, I was pissed, I was sad, I was frustrated, I was mentally distressed, and now I'm like, okay, what's next? What are we gonna do now? And I feel a little bit more revived, especially talking to all of you that are engaged. So I think to get back to what we want to do, again, how do we center the voice of the people that are most marginalized in our system? And so if you're a person of color in a community, think about who's the most marginalized within that community. Whether it's one of your Black friends, whether it's one of your Indigenous friends, whether it's one of your Black and Indigenous friends, or whether it's one of your Black, Indigenous, and LGBTQ friends, whoever is the intersectionality of all those identities is most marginalized, think of that person. What can you do to help that one individual in your mind that will then benefit everyone else? Because that's how systematic oppression works. they root out who's the most marginalized and make it difficult for them to do anything or to succeed in any way. And then everyone else then suffers because of that marginalization of the most oppressed. So I really just challenge you as young people to think about who in your own lives, your own community, whether it's family, community, or at school, who is the most marginalized there, and what can you do or what can you advocate for, elevate from their experience to then benefit everyone else.
We really want to be able to lift up people's voices and everything, and we also don't want to speak over them. So how would you go about balancing those two things?
Great question, and thank you for that. Sometimes it's as simple as asking them, asking what they want from you, and doing it in a way where you have a sense of cultural humility. Saying, hey, I recognize my privilege in this context, and I'm able to speak on your behalf if you'd like me to. But I also want to give you the option to be able to speak for yourself, and I can provide that platform. It's something that I did a lot on city council because I had that position where I was up on the dais with other council members and the mayor, and there was a lot of community that didn't have that privilege to be there. And so what I would do is I would throw out a specific policy or plan from the dais and say, hey, we need to focus on this. And I see in the crowd, we have about 3 or 4 people. Of course, I had already talked with them previously, and they said they'd like to speak. And we need to give them space to be able to provide their citizen comment around this particular issue. And so it would center their voice in the conversation, but I would just provide that platform. So I would just check in with whomever you think you would like to provide space for, to validate whether they would like, first validate their experience, and then second validate whether they would like to share that experience or whether they would like you to be able to share that experience from your point of privilege that you may have.
Thank you.